Like the critique of this video could have just we could have just done that in like 30 seconds. It's just there's no evidence for anything, and they don't deal with any of the actual arguments or the actual evidence that I provided. So okay, I'm recording now.
Okay.
I'm using a screen cap program. It's pretty shitty, but at least then I don't have to edit the video in with the...
Yeah.
Okay, so we're responding to this Give Me Liberty, Give Me Freedom guy who posted this video response to my original video on the Holodomor. And yeah, let's watch the video. Okay, let's stop at there's the picture of the map.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff to me, that was just pointless. Like, he's like, oh, really? But, let's see, well, it was 1932 to 33, but there was more to it than that. But anyway, I will allow you to talk crap a little bit more. Okay. Do you have anything to say?
Not really. This is just pointless. Oh, wow.
Okay, the real facts. I love how he's using the exact same font and everything.
The real facts.
Like
and starts playing, like, fucking Orientalist music. Like, oh no!
Yeah, I love how he's using, okay, let's stop at the wall of text.
Alright.
41 seconds. Like, he's using the exactly... like, my video was made with this shitty Windows Movie Maker thing, and he's using the exact same thing, so it's... looks confusing when the video that he's responding to looks the exact same way.
Yeah.
Okay, you wanna read the thing?
Yeah, okay. In its broadest sense, it is also used to describe the Ukrainian genocide that began in 1929 with the massive waves of deadly deportations from Ukraine's most successful farmers, kulaks or kulaks, or kurkels or kulaks in Russian, as well as the deportations and executions of Ukraine's religious, intellectual, and cultural leaders, culminating in the devastating forced famine that killed millions more innocent individuals. The genocide, in fact, continued for several more years with the further destruction of Ukraine's political leadership, the resettlement of Ukraine's depopulated areas with other ethnic groups, and prosecution of those who dare speak of the famine publicly, and consistent blatant denial of famine by the Soviet regime.
Wow.
You know something else I've heard? I've heard that, like, the Soviet Union randomly deported, like, 1 million Jehovah's Witnesses. Have you ever heard that?
No. Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, there's like a Wikipedia page for it too. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Well, there's a Wikipedia page for everything.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check that this is actually recording, because I don't know if it's recording my system sounds.
Okay.
Okay, I'm recording again.
Okay.
What? Democratic socialism versus national socialism?
Yeah, that's another video. Yeah. Fuck.
Wow, okay, so... deportations and executions of Ukraine's religious leaders. I mean, in the broadest sense, it could be used to describe, well, that's pretty broad. I mean, we're talking about... They're saying that it's a man-made famine, but they're saying that it's like a deportation of religious leaders that happened in the 1920s.
Yeah, I don't get this. Like, it's supposed to be like, usually what people say is like, oh, Stalin genocided Ukraine because like they had too much nationalist sentiment and he wanted to crush it, so he killed a bunch of people. But then it's like, oh, they deported them. Like, that's not usually involved here.
Yeah, well, I mean, they usually say that he killed like some crazy number of people, like some 50 million, 20 million or something, but usually they just, I mean, it's a well-known fact that they just pretty much deported a bunch of the kulaks.
Yeah.
I guess that's could be why there's so many of them in Canada, but because I think, if I remember correctly, like a bunch of his sources that he links are like pretty much just Canadian, Ukrainian sources.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's culminating in the devastating forced famine that killed millions more innocent individuals. Okay,
Yeah.
like I guess the whole point of this is like he's saying that these are the real facts, but he doesn't really provide any kind of like evidence that would be like any kind of evidence that would be strong enough to really justify claims like this.
I mean, like, I agree that the famine killed innocent individuals. I just don't think that it was caused by Stalin or that he wanted to fucking do it. Like, he says, like, oh, kulaks were Ukraine's most successful farmers. Like, kulaks weren't farmers at all. They were people who owned farmers, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's people really think that these kulaks were super poor, but really they were farmers in the sense that they might work, but their main, like the definition of a kulak is that your main income comes from stuff that's not your work.
Yeah.
You know, renting land and hiring other workers to work for you and speculating on the market and stuff.
Petty bourgeois, wealthy peasants.
Yeah, and like I think the reason this video is so pointless is because it basically just tells this cliche argument that's like based on Wikipedia and basic Cold War anti-communist propaganda, and it doesn't really have any kind of evidence to back any of this up, and it doesn't even like attempt to disprove or debunk anything that I said.
Yeah.
And I actually provided pretty good evidence for my stuff, I think.
And, like, okay, well, some people will say, like, oh, the Soviets didn't do it on purpose, but it was just a bureaucratic fuck-up because the evil Stalinists didn't know how to do paperwork, and then they starved a bunch of people. Then other people will be like, oh, Stalin did it on purpose, but they never give a solid reason as to why Stalin would want to just randomly, deliberately starve all of, like, Ukraine, even though the famine affected other areas besides Ukraine. Like, he was a pretty shitty, like, mass murderer if that was his fucking intention, so...
Yeah, and, like the... Well, how should I say this? Like, there's actually quite a lot of scholarly debate about this, like, even among experts who are not left-wing. Like, there's this, I can't remember his name, but there's this pretty well-known right-wing anti-communist historian who is like the often cited as the foremost expert on this, and he basically just says that, you know, it was not deliberate at all, and it wasn't even caused by any kind of bureaucratic fuck-up, it was just weather, and that's it. So...
Yeah.
And it's on the Wikipedia page actually, but there's like, it's pretty crazy how there's like Conquest who's saying that there were like tens of millions of victims, and then there's other people who are like, well, maybe it was deliberate, maybe it wasn't, and then there's like other people who are also right wing and say, no, it wasn't deliberate and it wasn't even a mistake. So there's like no real consensus on this.
Yeah, I don't understand why people even use Conquest anymore. Like, I'm pretty sure even his crazy-ass numbers, he went back and recanted and went, okay, some of these are at least a little bit inaccurate. So, and Conquest is always the person who has the highest and craziest numbers, but even he was like, okay, this is probably bullshit. So...
Yeah, and it's... I mean, I don't really know the guy's history so well, so I don't really know if he was like... if he was bribed or if he was pressured or what, because he's like, there's this kind of recent book that's called I think there was one called The Harvest of Sorrow or something, which was like saying that.
Oh my god.
Well, it was actually like relatively reasonable. It like said that it wasn't really deliberate, and the amount of people who died was like 2 or 3 million or something. And then there was this other book that said that was called From Farm to Factory, which was they're all capitalist books, but the farm from Farm to Factory was actually pretty reasonable. I saw a lecture by the author, and it was basically just saying that the industrialization was like incredible, but that the collectivization wasn't really that useful. But Conquest apparently like said that those books were interesting and stuff. So so I don't know if he was really that crazy or if he was just pressured or something.
Yeah, like another book that propagates this shit is In the Court of the Red Tsar by Sebag Montefiore, and like
well, yeah, that's one of the crazier ones though.
Yeah, in one of Gregory Lucero's lectures, he mentions that like the author is literally a British aristocrat who's like really wealthy, who writes it, and it's like, oh, I wonder what class interest this book might have.
Yeah, and generally, like, there's these many of these historians that are called like the new school historians or something like that, like Arch Getty and people like that, who are they're not even left wing, but they're basically just saying that most of this Cold War era Soviet history should just be completely like redone.
Yeah.
Because it's so clearly politically motivated. Like when they had absolutely no access to any of the archival materials, and they had absolutely no chance of going there and trying to like do some kind of, you know, actual field work or anything. They basically had no reliable information at all. Yet they come up with these crazy books that basically just claim to be factual.
You know what I thought was funny was like, I think at one point Pravda like jokingly published an article about how the Dust Bowl was like a deliberate genocide by FDR, and like he like killed a bunch of people in America through the famine, and it was jokingly it was supposed to be like reflection of like the Holodomor, and be like, haha, you do this too, but just see how like silly it looks to them.
Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't know it was in Pravda.
Oh yeah, maybe it wasn't in Pravda. It was in some newspaper though, I think, or someone published it.
And the funny thing is that I mean, of course, it's ridiculous to say that it was deliberate, but it was clearly like, I mean, lots of people died in that.
Yeah.
But okay, let's move on. So bunch of weird ominous music playing, and
yeah, what's up with that?
And the shittiest font ever, can barely see what it says.
Bolsheviks led by Vladimir Lenin take power in Russia. Okay.
How horrible.
Why are we going back? I don't understand. Like,
Joseph Stalin. Be very scared.
what is with this fucking Orientalist music?
Stalin introduced a program of agricultural collectivization, and let's go back to that. See if it says like basic like video making skills. Like, don't have this huge wall of text and then have it play for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Agricultural collectivization that forces farmers to give up their private land, equipment and livestock and join state-owned factory-like collective farms.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Seems accurate.
It's way more efficient that way anyway. I don't even... It's like, oh no, you get to stop being a petty bourgeois peasant. Sorry.
I mean, I can see where he's going with this. He's going to say that they basically just sold all this grain that could have been used to feed the people, but anyway, like this agricultural collectivization like forces farmers to give up their private land, equipment and livestock. Like, even the basic I gave some facts about this. I mean, intentionally, and I tried to have sources for everything because people are gonna deny it if I don't. So they had a land reform, because one of the key points that the Bolsheviks had was, that they want to give land to people, because it was peace, bread, and land was their thing. Because people wanted to end World War I, they wanted land because there was a massive shortage of land, and they wanted food. So there was a land reform, and still, like, at the end of the NEP, after like 7 years,
yeah, something like that.
Something like 3 million people had been made completely landless again, despite the fact that they had all been basically given land before. So
yeah.
And what the collectivization really did was it just made it legal for, because this is at the point when the kulaks stop basically farming, they at least cut back on production to inflate prices.
Right.
So the collectivization basically just made it legal for them to use all the kulak land that the kulaks are not using. And of course the kulaks didn't like that, and then it kind of just started to escalate from there. It eventually gave the peasants just the legal right to just take back all the lands the kulaks had cheated from them.
Yeah, and like regarding the deportation, like they would deport the kulaks because they weren't working their land. They were like burning their crops and shit like that. And then they would just move people in who were willing to work the land. So it's like, I don't see the problem with deporting them. I really don't. If you're gonna burn your crops during a famine, like you buy, like go to Siberia.
Yeah, I don't like. I agree. It's completely crazy. Like these people, these were not some poor victims. These people, and it's like talking about private land and equipment. Well, millions of people had been driven off their land by the kulaks, and they had basically no equipment of any kind. Like 1/3 of the peasants didn't have even a single horse or a cow or anything. So they were basically tilling the soil with their own muscles with like wooden plows.
Yeah.
And the majority of the peasants had a single horse. So when they're talking about all these like cattle slaughtering, like the peasants supposedly just killed all their cattle as protest, like who really had all the horses and cattle? It wasn't the peasants, it was the kulaks.
Yeah.
And second of all, like this says, factory like collective farms where basically everything is collectivized, and let's see, everything state-owned factory like collective farms, like that's wrong. They weren't state-owned at all. They were state farms, which were completely separate. They were owned by the farmers themselves. And then to say that like everything is collective, the form of the collective farms was an agricultural article, which basically means that only the production buildings and the land and the machines, which were given free, by the state for free, and then all the big cattle and stuff, those were collective. But the people's home living areas and living buildings and their own small plots, those were all still private. And like I'm sure like Trotskyists would call that not real socialism or something, but that's what they did precisely because they didn't want to anger the peasants.
Yeah, you know what I think is strange is the Soviet media, like, once the collectivization of agriculture was complete, is like, they would still refer to farmers as peasants, which is really strange, because they shouldn't have done that, because that would mean that, they're a different class entirely, but, yeah.
Well, like, when I read something about the 37 Constitution, and that's still, because people had the chance to, like, I think they sent people all over the country to ask if they had any ideas, like, what should be in the Constitution. and people basically just, there were different ideas like how they should word it, and I think in that they decided to call them collective farmers, because they are still kind of a separate class, because they're not wage workers like proletarians are.
Yeah.
Because they're basically just a bunch of people who own this farm together, and then they just farm it, and then they sell the crops, and then they share the money that they get from selling it according to how much everybody has worked.
Yeah.
So do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I think that it's weird. Like, the collective farms was basically like somewhat of a like communist relation of production, because they weren't really like selling stuff on the market, like their grain anyway, or maybe it's the other way around with the state industry. But
well, in a way they were, because they called it Soviet trade, which was like, because some people said that they should just move directly away from money and to just trading commodities, but the counter argument was that they basically had to start with money, and they had to develop a system of so-called Soviet trade so that they could move to higher stages after that, so that basically they just cooperated with nearby cities somehow, like they bought all the industrial stuff from the cities, and then they sold all the agricultural products. But in a way it was like a market, but the prices were still regulated, so it wasn't like a free market.
yeah, like well, I think the state would directly distribute the like machinery and equipment to the farms, like without having the farms pay for them. So like in that way, that like the state was like distributing things for free, but the actual farms themselves had to like sell stuff on the market. So it's just strange how like there's different like relations of production like within socialism. Like there's like a market, but there's also the state like redistributing equipment for free, which is like a communist relation in production, whereas the farms had like a capitalist one when they had to sell stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Many Ukrainian farmers known for their independence still refuse to... Okay, that's... there's no way we're gonna have...
Oh. Why does it fade so fast?
Yeah. What did that say? Many Ukrainian farmers known for their independence still refuse to join the collective farms, which they regarded as similar to returning to the serfdom of earlier centuries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've heard this many times, but like... Really? Like serfdom, I mean, they say that the kulaks were just swell guys, but I mean, that was basically like the definition of serfdom. The kulaks were landlords, basically, at least in some capacity.
Yeah, returning to serfdom, like how is being a collective farmer the same thing as being a serf? I don't understand. Being a farmer under a kulak, having to work for a kulak, would be more like serfdom.
Yeah, I guess they would say that because you can't sell the... Well, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Stalin introduces a policy of class warfare in the countryside in order to break down resistance to collectivization. Successful farmers, yeah, they're just successful. nothing really wrong with that. Are branded as the class enemy and brutal enforcement by regular troops and secret police is used to liquidate them as a class. Eventually anyone who resists collectivization is considered a kulak. Like, well, I guess it depends, like, anyone who resists, like, people didn't have to join. I mean, the kulaks were outright like banned from joining the collective farms.
Yeah.
So I guess anyone who resists is considered a kulak. Means that if you burn stuff and actually do like terrorist activities, well, then you're like pretty much lumped together with the kulaks, because that's what they did.
Yeah.
But And I love how he's using the term to liquidate them as a class, like implying it. He's not explaining what it means really, but
yeah, he probably thinks that it means to kill all of them.
yeah, when it really that just means that, you know, you take away their economic power, they stop being kulaks.
Yeah.
Let's. What kind of sources does he have? He has like 3 sources. Oh no, 2. Yeah, he has a news clip, which he has a source or the URL for the original video, and then he has some website. Yeah, holodomorct.org.
Oh God.
And if you go to the website and just go to, let's see, contact, it says that let's see, where are these people from? What is this? Yeah, it's contact information for Connecticut Holodomor Committee members.
Oh wow. It says that the Soviet government sharply increased Ukraine's production quotas, ensuring that they could not be met.
Okay.
Like, where are they getting that from? I don't think that their production quotas were increased.
It's not like they just had the same production and then the quotas were just so high that they couldn't meet them. I mean, the production just dropped.
Yeah, I mean, they constantly think that the Soviet government was just so dumb, like, oh wow, there's all this bad weather, you guys probably are going to have the same exact quota as you would if the weather was doing great. It's like, no, they're not stupid enough to think that. Like, I don't understand. They're going to be like, okay, there was bad weather, and in fact, the Soviets actually sent Ukraine itself at like 1 million tons of grain.
Yeah.
To, like, help them with the starvation, and they actually exhausted their grain reserves in like the east, like on the border with China, just so that they could feed Ukrainians. And like if the Japanese attacked, then like they would have had no food reserves for their army. So like, for people say like, oh, the Soviets deliberately starved Ukraine so that blah blah blah, Stalin, Moscow was doing just fine. It's like, no, actually, I mean, like, they really were putting their asses on the line to feed these people. It's actually the opposite. Like,
yeah, and it's, I mean, this guy, I love the fact that there's literally no source for any of this. I mean, there's this one website, basically. There's this one website which I would not consider reliable, and it's like, it's the same as if I say some crazy shit and just people ask for evidence and I just say, well, Google it. Like, no, you provide me some actual evidence. Like, I don't have the time to go through this entire website, and like, because this website is not even reliable. Like, I would have to go through their sources also.
yeah, I mean, they should come from primary source documents, which they don't. This is just a website with some words on it. Like, that's not, like, a news article is not a source. Like,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
people don't understand.
Yeah, it's, and about this like selling, exporting grain, and this what you said about them sending food aid and stuff, like that was like one of the main arguments that's used against, like that's used to support this Holodomor idea is the, you know, the export figures. But that's exactly why I went out of my way to just provide the actual numbers for the exports. And you know, these guys, I assume that they just don't believe me, because it clearly says that they exported, like, they stopped pretty much exporting completely during the famine, and instead they sent 1 million tons of food aid. So
yeah. And I think you have the pictures of the actual the exports where I mean, I think it's in Russian, but it shows like they sent them a bunch of aid, and then the amount of grain which is being produced went down a whole bunch, and so the quotas went down. I think something like that.
yeah, I took it from Wikipedia, but it has the original source. It's like from the Russian archives, but it also had the translation, so I actually just put up the actual numbers.
Yeah. But of course, people be like, "Oh, Russian archives are biased." It's like, well, at least it's a primary source document, and it's not just like a page that goes to like Ukraine Holodomor.
Yeah.
Like,
anticommunist.com.
yeah.
But I mean, and it's not like these archives were just something that Russians were, or the Soviet government was like, I hope somebody opens our archives. No, it was like many of these documents were completely secret until the Soviet Union collapsed.
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing as saying the CIA World Factbook, which is used by the CIA themselves. Like it's kind of the same as saying that that's just right-wing propaganda when it's meant for their own use and not for the public.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's see. 1.5 million Ukrainians fall victim to Stalin's dekulakization policies. I don't know where that number is coming from. Over the extent...
Numbers always have to change constantly. It's just dumb. I mean, like, I don't like to play numbers games because that's generally what Holocaust deniers do, but, like, seriously, the numbers change so drastically. It's like 1 million to, like, 100 million, like, every other day. It's like, come on.
Yeah, but when do the Holocaust numbers even change? I mean, isn't it always, like, 6 million?
Yeah, generally.
But, I mean... Yeah, this is... Armed dekulakization brigades forcibly confiscate land, livestock and other property and evict entire families. Like, they've got property, they've got livestock. Like, most people didn't have any of that shit.
Yeah.
Close to half a million individuals are dragged from their homes, packed into freight trains and shipped to remote, uninhabited areas such as Siberia, where they are left often without food or shelter. Like, bunch of, like, lots of talk but no evidence. Especially children die in transit or soon thereafter. Sure, okay.
Again, no source
I'll
on that.
I'll just take your word for it, because you seem like a swell guy.
And, like, what are they saying? They left them out in the middle of nowhere? Like, okay, so
Why not
there's a
just
train. There's a train going there, but it's like, where does the train go? The train just goes to, like, the middle of nowhere. There's like someone just built a railroad track just in the middle of the snow and just left everyone there. Like,
yeah, because building a railroad to Siberia is just so cheap that it's worth it.
yeah.
They just drove the train there and then just shot the driver and everyone in it for the lols. So there would be no witnesses.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue. Okay, it says they increased the production quotas and what...
oh my god.
Oh, and then there's the classic, if you steal even like one stalk of wheat, you'll get just shot.
Nice.
So, like, how are they gonna enforce that? A decree is implemented that calls for the arrest of or execution of any person, even a child, found taking as little as a few stalks of wheat or any possible food item from the field where he worked.
No.
They said there's like blockades preventing the transport of food into the villages when they themselves sent them food aid.
Yeah, makes a whole lot of sense.
Stalin states of Ukraine that the national question is in essence a rural question, and he and his commanders determined to teach a lesson through famine. I mean, that's supposed to be a quote.
Where does that come from?
Teach a lesson through a famine, and ultimately deal a quote-unquote crushing blow to the backbone of Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've read on the national question, but, like, I don't remember him saying that anywhere. So,
like, the national question is in essence a rural question. What does that even mean?
Yeah, what? That's, like, the national question is supposed to be about how nations are perceived and, like, developed in capitalism. Like, what the fuck I don't understand.
Yeah, and about
It
like
doesn't mean anything.
it's also it's like supposed to be the Bolshevik like idea of how nationalities should have self-determination.
It's a rural question. Okay.
Yeah, I mean the rural question sounds like something which they talked a lot about was the the massive contradiction between town and country, but they weren't like we just want to starve the countryside. They were like, no, we need to bring the countryside up so that it's on the same cultural level as the town.
Yeah.
Because like just imagine like what it would be like living in the Ukrainian countryside if you have this tiny plot of land and you're like farming it with your bare hands almost.
Yeah.
Compared to living in a collective farm where you've got like fucking tractors and stuff.
Yep, but Stalin wanted to. I guarantee you, like he might have said something along the lines of like he probably said crushing blow like once, referring to something completely different than to take it out of context. Like he wanted to be Ukraine. So
yeah, like crushing blow to. There's no way he said like they want to deal a crushing blow to like Ukraine as a nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just continue. This is taking too long anyway. Okay, by June, at the height of the famine, people in Ukraine are dying at the rate of 30,000 a day. Nearly a third of them are children under 10. Approximately 4 million deaths are attributed to starvation within the borders of Soviet Ukraine. This does not include deportations, executions, or deaths from ordinary causes. What is a death from? Well, I guess old age or something, but Stalin denies the world that there's any famine in Ukraine, continues to export. Like, that's bullshit. They didn't continue to export millions of tons of grain. I mean, if you just look at the stats, it shows they exported like 4 million tons in like before, and then during the time before the famine, and then just nothing when the famine happened.
I mean, like, there was a delay, like, I think there was like a 1 or 2 month delay before they realized the extent of the actual famine, and then, like, immediately after they realized it, they bumped down the exports, like, literally immediately. But obviously there's a little bit of delay, because you can't tell a famine's happening, like, immediately as it starts, so...
Yeah, that's true, like, the main cause of the disastrous consequences was that they didn't immediately know the extent of the famine, and also because like one of the even right-wing experts on the subject say that one of the, apart from just having bad harvests due to bad weather, that one of the main causes of this was the this disease called grain rust, which basically just kills the grain and the plants, but they kind of become hollow and they look like they're just fine. So it's impossible to, it was like impossible to tell that they are not usable, which made it difficult to determine like what area had food and what area didn't.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to like find where these stats are even coming from. I'm looking at the website right now. Information links.
Okay, I'm just gonna continue with the video.
Okay.
I don't think you're gonna miss anything. Now let me show you sentence again.
What the fuck?
They will show me sentence. More than enough to have saved every starving man, woman, and child.
Oh god. Here we go. Oh, Moscow is fine.
Then there's a picture of a bunch of hungry people. And oh yeah, this is
an American newspaper. That's great.
Yeah, this is actually pretty funny because I was because this particular news article is actually proven to be fake by other people who also say the Holodomor is real. So there's actually this website which also says like the Holodomor was deliberate and stuff, and they actually have an article which was written back in the day about somebody who basically exposed that article which they have here as being just fake.
Yeah.
So that shows like some hardcore source criticism right there. They don't even bother to check if any of this is real. They just, oh, this looks like a nice picture. They have no idea where it's from or what the article actually is about.
Yeah, another common thing I see is when people are like, oh, here's pictures of starved Ukrainians. They just show pictures of like starving Indians under the British Raj in India, and it's like it's clearly in India, but they like still use the picture anyway just because it says it's from the Holodomor on Wikipedia.
Yeah, and like people from just the Russian Civil War or other famines, just unrelated famines, or the Great Depression, or just anything. Even though there would be actual pictures too, so why even bother?
Yeah.
Ukraine's president on Saturday commemorated the millions of people who died from 1932 to 1933 during what some call a Soviet-engineered genocide.
Yeah, even the news guy says that it's just some people call it like that. Like, some people call it a genocide. We don't really know. Like, nobody says that about the Holocaust. Like, some people think Hitler killed those people, but deliberately.
Soviet leaders refused to acknowledge.
I actually had a history professor who said that like the reason that Stalin was overweight was because he was just like taking all of the grain and like eating it from Ukraine. I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah, that sounds completely reasonable.
He said the same thing about Mao and shit too. He's like, oh, they're overweight because they starved people. I'm like, okay, that explains Enver Hoxha because he was really skinny, but whatever.
Yeah, like one guy is just eating all of it.
Yeah, like the Kremlin is stacked with giant piles of like wheat.
Yeah.
They also confiscated grain supplies and prevented travel to find food. Mr. Poroshenko said the tragedy, known as Holodomor, would have never happened if Ukraine had been an
trustworthy
independent,
Nazi guy,
democratic country.
Like, wait a what was his party's name again? It was like Our Ukraine or something.
Maidan? I think that's...
No, Maidan is the name of the square where the protesters were.
Well, yeah, but, yeah, he's obviously a right-wing reactionary, especially because he allows, like, neo-Nazi militias to fight against Donetsk, so...
Yeah, in general, like, this whole Ukraine thing, like, obviously, like, because here the media is just basically making fun of the whole fascist thing. They're like, oh, the Russian media is just so crazy because they say there's Nazis. And it's like, it's funny because the Russian media says that, oh, like, all these guys are a bunch of Nazis, and obviously that's not accurate. I mean, not all of them are Nazis, but it's way more accurate than to say that, oh, there's no Nazis in Ukraine. I mean, they got fucking Nazi paramilitaries fighting and killing people.
Yeah, just, I think it was like January 2nd or 3rd, there was like a giant-ass rally in Kiev with like 15,000 neo-Nazis with like banners of Stefan Bandera, who was a Nazi collaborator during World War II.
Yeah. And, yeah, so that's, but to me it's kind of interesting, like, the both sides, obviously, like, the Russia Today is a completely biased source, obviously.
Yeah.
But still, it doesn't mean that everything they say is automatically fake, and it's like hilarious that people who say that it's so obviously fake, they don't like apply nearly the same kind of skepticism when it comes to Western sources.
Yeah.
And then the video says, "Did you hear that?" Yeah, the news dude said stuff.
Well, let's listen again. Okay, I could have just replayed it.
Said the tragedy, known as Holodomor, would have never happened if Ukraine had been an independent, democratic country.
Oh, that's... yeah, sure.
It's a democratic... yeah, was Ukraine an independent and democratic country under, like, Tsarism? I don't fucking think so.
Yeah. I'm sure they just blame it on, like, the Tsar was just... it was all because the Russians did it. Like, because realistically, without the Bolshevik Revolution, it still wouldn't have been an independent country, quote-unquote. But I'm guessing they will just say, oh, well, Tsarism was bad, but they were just Russians, so that's why it was bad. And really, what kind of an argument is that even? Like, if we were just an independent country, then somehow the weather would be different.
And then, you know, and then there's, like, this stupid shit that says, like, Stalin was a Russian nationalist, and it's like, okay, so a Georgian is, like, a Russian nationalist? Okay. Like, that's fine. Makes total sense.
Yeah, people call Stalin a Jew, people call Stalin an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
So...
said the tragedy, known as Holodomor, would have never happened if Ukraine had been an independent, democratic country.
Zachary Merriam says otherwise. Now, that's like equally credible, like, some fuck said this.
Yeah, like, what the fuck, dude?
But that's like what media does. I've noticed that they just say that this random expert that you've never heard before says this, and then they can just say anything, and they don't have to back it up. They can just say, this guy said it, so we don't have to take responsibility.
Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, said that Holodomor bad, Stalin bad. Okay, that's great.
Ominous sounding music again. Any report of the famine was something.
A corpse in the victim in the streets of Kharkiv, 1933. Okay, that's definitely a corpse.
Denial of the famine by Soviet authorities. And it's like this guy who supposedly denied the famine, he's like, you know, he just said that, like, it's exaggerated. That's
denial.
Not... yeah, denial.
I don't understand. They already sourced, like, a Western newspaper from the U.S., which is faked, but regardless, they were like, oh, look, the Western sources say that 6 million people died in the famine in Ukraine. Now they're like, but the West denied it. It's like, alright, pick one.
I can't even read what this says, because it's like a black and white picture, mostly black, and then it's
oh
like
my
this
God, what?
light yellow text.
What the fuck? Come on now.
I seriously can't tell what that says. Franklin D. Roosevelt chose to formally recognize
Stalin's communist government and also negotiated a sweeping new trade agreement. The following year, the pattern of denial in the West culminated with the admission of the Soviet Union into the League of Nations. Stalin's 5 years plans for the modernization of the Soviet Union depended largely on the purchase of massive amounts of manufactured goods and technology from Western nations. These nations were unwilling to, I guess, disrupt lucrative trade agreements with the Soviet Union in order to pursue the matter of the famine.
Well, you know what's actually a big cause of this? Because the Western economies were completely collapsing at this point.
What?
Because, I mean, it was the 1930s, so it's like the Soviet Union is willing to hire our unemployed people.
Yeah.
And the Soviet Union is buying all kinds of stuff which is like stimulating our economies. So I kind of see why they would agree to that.
Yeah.
Because, like, people don't know this really, but at the time, like, planned economy was a lot of, like, academic people were considering, like, they were coming up with ideas of different kinds of planned economy, even without having socialism even. Because they thought that, you know, capitalism, this market economy, it's so broken that, and look at the Soviet Union, we just have to get some kind of planned economy going.
Yeah, and really what they're talking about is they're like, oh, Stalin sold all that grain to the West, but it's like, okay, well, the plan was to industrialize. You need industry to industrialize. You can't get the industry from Russia. because it's undeveloped. So you have to get money by selling grain, and then you can, get the industry, buy the industry from the West, and then become industrialized. Like, how else are you supposed to do it besides selling stuff?
Yeah, it's a good point though that they really did sell grain, but it's the argument that they're making is that they supposedly didn't stop selling it when the famine happened, which is incorrect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true that the 1930s, the early 1930s, were really rough because they were. It's true that they were under an extremely tight budget because they needed to cut expenses and get as much money as possible. But in the late 30s, in the second 5-year plan, it was widely recognized that it was way more pleasant. Like I don't know if it was British or American. I guess he was British science fiction writer and a political something. The H.G. Wells. Mm-hmm. He went to the USSR in the late 30s and said that it was so much better than in the late 20s when he was there last. That they were
Didn't he interview Stalin, or is that someone else?
Yeah, that was him. But
yeah.
But he said that there's there was a crazy amount of completely new towns and new cities built, and he said that all the buildings are just so new and so clean and nice because they're, because obviously when they started building those it was rough, but when they were all finished and they actually started getting the stuff done, it was obviously much better.
Yeah.
But this is like blaming Africa for being poor. Like, how dare you sell your raw materials when you have nothing else?
And again, the text fades immediately.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother stopping every time now.
Yeah. Okay, the Ukrainian government passed a decree that the Holodomor...
Because mass killings and concentration camps were based on that ideology.
Oh yeah, this is classic.
Work makes you free. Nazi camps. Work is an honor. The Soviet camps. If someone...
Oh my god.
That's
They're going into Auschwitz. This is not... What the fuck?
Yeah, and it's just like a kind of a convenient coincidence that they both happen to have the word work in it. Like, the other one says that work makes you free. Like, what does that even mean? Like, supposedly you get out if you work. The other one says that work is an honor. Like, in concentration camps, people were killed because they were different race, or if they were left-wing. But in a labor prison, you're supposed to be either it's punitive or it's rehabilitative. So what should they say? Like, work is an honor, like, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, Stalin had ethnic hatred of Ukrainians. Except he doesn't actually say that anywhere in any of his writings ever.
He said he wanted to crush Ukraine.
Wanted to fight the ideology behind it. He would end up fighting the Soviet regime.
Oh yeah, this is great.
This is just disgust. Like,
yeah.
Why are they showing Holocaust stuff? Like, there's no correlation here. They're like, oh, but the Soviets did the same thing. But it's like, okay, but if that's true, why don't you not show shit from the Holocaust?
Yeah, it says that Molotov knew that if somebody opposed Nazism, that meant he opposed communism.
What?
It says that basically if somebody opposed the idea of Nazism, then it's the same as opposing communism, so they would have to fight both the Nazis and the Soviets because they both have the word work in their thing.
Oh.
This is like...
Yeah, he might have actually said that just because he was trying to do a political maneuver so that the USSR wouldn't get fucking invaded by 10 different countries. I mean,
no, I don't
he was the foreign minister. He was just trying to not get.
I mean,
made.
it doesn't have there's no video, there's no sound, there's no quote even. It's just claims that Molotov said that, or that doesn't even claim that Molotov said that. It just claims that he knew it, supposedly.
Nice.
Nice.
After all, he was the one who personally monitored the extermination of 7 million Ukrainians.
No one can get out of Ukraine.
Yeah, Molotov personally monitored the execution of 7 million Ukrainians, even though
that would not have even been his job as like an executive person. Like, he was the foreign minister. Why would he be? Why?
He was personally there all the time.
Yeah.
They would just have this really long line of people going into his office to be shot.
Yeah.
Where he was just watching it personally.
No, he like went around with a pistol. That's what he did.
Yeah,
so.
he did it.
They agreed that for the common good, certain groups simply needed to be killed.
Where is this documentary even from? It sounds like a fucking 1950s anti-communist propaganda movie.
And it's just a bunch of pictures of Nazis. It says that both of them agreed that some people had to die. Well, doesn't everybody? Like, if you ask, like, every country basically says that they have enemies.
Yeah.
Like, and people just think that the Soviet Union was just they used sort of like how should I say, like revolutionary and like militant methods just for the lols. It's not like it was a revolutionary situation or anything. Like, show me a revolution that doesn't do anything like that.
Peaceful.
Yeah, some peaceful revolutions, have happened, but they haven't lasted for very long. So.
Deliberately in the North Caucasus, the Volga Basin, and Ukraine. The Soviet secret police seal off Ukraine's borders. No one can get out or bring food in. A nation the size of France is strangled by hunger.
Like, this is legit as fuck.
Okay, so some British correspondent, let's ask him about the Holodomor. Sounds like a right source.
Yeah, this looks like it was made in the 60s or 70s or something.
Yeah. I can't hear a damn thing they're saying.
What?
Like, it's just like ambient, because I don't know, I just can't hear them.
Yeah, but the sad music is so loud.
Yeah.
10 million people died.
Oh, now it's 10 million?
God damn
7
it.
million of them in Ukraine. 3 million of them children.
Oh, the sound quality is so bad.
I know.
Oh, it is a British correspondent, okay.
Oh my god, this is so bad.
Were you joking when you said that?
What, the British correspondent?
Like, did you actually see this?
No, it literally said he was a British correspondent.
Yeah, okay, I thought it was a joke, but it's real.
Yeah.
Which it was done. Absence of even any kind of sympathy.
If you realize this terrible past and you are always shaking again and it moves you again and you...
And then they killed them.
Yeah.
City was
Play the violin music.
so I will at once a week.
I can't understand what he's saying. I can't see what it has his name and his title, but I can't see what it says.
Music is so loud and like murmured. It sounds like an ambient black metal album. This is bad.
Loaves of bread a month. So that's only how
Harvest of Despair.
But the peasants were dying.
Yeah.
This was the first time in my life that I saw people dying. And
this picture of the bunch of bodies stacked up next to the Orthodox crosses always comes up, but I mean, it's supposed to be from the Holodomor, but I mean that could be from fucking anywhere. But
Like,
whatever.
I've seen that in completely other unrelated events, but
yeah.
And you know, people Photoshop these pictures so many times that you forget which one is the legit one because they like take parts of other pictures and put them in other pictures.
Yeah.
Like they must have used that same stack of bodies in like a million pictures. Oh Jesus, the music. I hope they can even hear us. I mean, this is... Okay, I'm gonna lower the sound, because this is just horrible. Harvest of Despair. And then it just ends. Okay, well, conclusion, there's no... They didn't bother, like, with any kind of sources or anything. Like, what if I just took some random Soviet news clip that said, everything is fine? Would they just believe... should I just expect that they would just believe it?
Yeah. What do you think about the eyewitness accounts here? I'm looking at the ones on the website. They don't actually... they say who said it, but, like, I mean, they really could have just made up some random-ass names.
I mean, it's... I don't... there's no reason to really think that they're even legit, but I don't really deny that they could be. But it's always like they say, like, we were hungry. Well, it was famine, like... And then they... Like, because I've talked with a bunch of people who say similar things about other countries, like they say, oh, like, Venezuela is so horrible, they've ruined our country, and then the guy, like, basically admits, after I've pressured him for long enough, he just says, well, you know, my family is, like, super rich, and that's why I hate the Venezuelan public who support Chavez, because they're a bunch of sheep. And they should go fuck themselves. Like, so anybody can play the game of acting like a victim here, but
yep, that's always the common thing. Is it's always like, oh, I had connections with the monarch, and so that's why I don't like them. It's like, okay,
yeah, they're like, I was just a regular. Yeah, actually, the Venezuelan guy, he started by saying that that the government ruined his grandfather's business, and then it turns out like his grandfather's business is like one of the biggest like electrical companies in the country.
Yeah, like
it's like
the same shit from fucking Cuban expats, where they're like, oh, but not Batista, but yeah, Fidel Castro took away my mansion. And it's like, oh well, what a fucking sob story.
He made me free my slaves. It's like they make it sound like they're just this small like business owner, and then it turns out they have a fucking mansion.
Yeah.
But yeah, we spent like an hour on this 10-minute video, but whatever. Anything what you want to add?
No, not really.
I mean, really, the like the critique of this video could have just we could have just done that in like 30 seconds. It's just there's no evidence for anything, and they don't deal with any of the actual arguments or the actual evidence that I provided, so
yeah,
not much you can do about that. I mean, I provided evidence, I provided the actual numbers. They could say that they're fake, but they don't even bother doing that.
I mean, like, what are the sources here? We have, like, Holodomor.org, and then we have a news report from Poroshenko, the fucking president of Ukraine.
Yeah. Who obviously would not say that stuff for political reasons at all.
It's like, okay, like, what if I want to talk about North Korea and go, like, oh, go to the DPRK's website, and then here's the thing from Kim Jong-un's speech. It's like,
yeah,
alright.
Yeah, it's like they just expect us to just believe anything they say without any kind of evidence, but when when we say anything, they like demand extremely concrete, irrefutable proof.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's that. We are pretty much done here.
Yep.
Stupid video. Blah.